welcome to the channel. Today we will be talking about Fatal Frame 2. If the previews, rumors, and the general vibe of the series are anything to go by, the upcoming version of Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly, is shaping up to be the kind of horror experience where you question not only the sanity of the characters, but also your own life choices for willingly playing it. The story centers on twin sisters Mio Amakura and Mayu Amakura, who appear to have the supernatural talent of accidentally wandering into the worst possible places on Earth. In this case, they stumble upon an abandoned location known as Minakami Village, a place that looks like it hasn't had a normal day since the invention of lanterns. Imagine a village where every building creaks ominously, every path is covered in fog, and every shadow feels like it's waiting to start a very awkward conversation with you about unfinished spiritual business. Instead of doing the reasonable thing, turning around immediately and going home, the twins decide to explore, which is basically the horror game equivalent of seeing a sign that says "Danger, Haunted Village," and thinking, wow, free tourism. This is where the game's slow burn tension likely begins, with players stepping cautiously through empty houses, broken bridges, and narrow forest paths, while the atmosphere quietly whispers that something is very wrong. The brilliance of the setup is that nothing immediately jumps out to attack you. Instead, the village itself feels like a museum dedicated entirely to bad decisions and tragic history. Every abandoned home looks like someone left in a hurry centuries ago, which raises the obvious question, what scared everyone away? As the twins move deeper into the village, the environment probably starts to tell its story in subtle ways. Faded photographs, dusty journals, ritual symbols carved into wood, and doors that open just a little too slowly for comfort. At this point, the player is likely thinking two things simultaneously. This place has incredible horror atmosphere, and why are we still here? The answer, of course, is that horror protagonists have a unique combination of bravery, curiosity, and a complete inability to recognize obvious danger signs. Mio, being the more grounded twin, will probably spend most of the game trying to keep track of Mayu, who seems oddly drawn to the deeper parts of the village. Mayu's behavior may start out innocent enough. She might simply wander ahead or stare at distant buildings as if something is calling to her. But in the context of a cursed village with a mysterious past, that behavior quickly becomes extremely concerning. The player, meanwhile, will likely begin to feel that unsettling sense that the village isn't just haunted, it's actively waiting for something to happen. That slow realization is what makes the opening premise of strong Fatal Frame 2 so effective. Instead of overwhelming players with immediate chaos, the game gradually builds a sense that the twins have stepped into a place frozen in time, a place that still remembers something terrible. And if the rumors about the upcoming version hold true, the developers will probably lean even harder into that atmosphere, making every creaking floorboard and distant whisper feel like part of a long-forgotten tragedy that is slowly waking up again. As the story continues to unfold in Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly, the player eventually learns that the village's eerie atmosphere isn't just for dramatic effect. It's the result of a long and deeply disturbing tradition known as the Crimson Sacrifice Ritual. And if you're thinking that name already sounds like the plot of a horror movie nobody in their right mind would participate in, congratulations, you're already ahead of the villagers who invented it. The ritual was apparently designed to keep a dark supernatural force sealed away, which in ancient village logic meant that the best solution was sacrificing twins in a ceremony involving ropes, symbolism, and an absolutely terrifying amount of chanting. In theory, the ritual was meant to maintain balance between the living world and the spirit world. In practice, it mostly seems to have guaranteed that the village would become one of the most haunted locations imaginable. The more Mio investigates the history of the place, the more it becomes clear that the villagers were deeply invested in traditions that modern society would classify as horrible ideas. Through scattered notes and environmental storytelling, players will likely piece together the tragic stories of past twins who were forced into this ritual. each generation repeating the same grin ceremony to prevent a supernatural catastrophe. The tragedy, of course, is that the ritual eventually failed, leaving the village abandoned and filled with restless spirits who probably have a lot of unresolved feelings about how things ended. This is where the narrative really starts leaning into psychological horror. The player isn't just exploring haunted houses. They're uncovering a cycle of fear and sacrifice that trapped generations of people in a nightmare they couldn't escape. Meanwhile, Mayu's strange connection to the village may begin to intensify. She might start hearing voices, wandering towards specific locations, or recalling fragments of memories that don't quite belong to her. For Mio, this becomes both a mystery and a growing fear. Why does her sister seem so connected to the village's past? The deeper the player goes into the story, the more it begins to feel like the twins were somehow meant to arrive here. And if that thought alone isn't unsettling enough, the game's ghosts are always ready to remind you that the spirit world is paying very close attention. These spirits are not the friendly Casper-style ghosts that politely float through walls. They're tragic figures trapped in moments of suffering, appearing suddenly in dark corridors or silently watching from the end of a hallway, like they're judging your interior decorating skills. The genius of the horror in Fatal Frame 2 is that these ghosts often appear quietly, letting the player notice them before they attack. That means the moment of terror isn't just the encounter itself. It's the slow realization that something has been standing behind you for several seconds. At this stage of the story, the village stops feeling like an abandoned place and starts feeling like a stage where old tragedies are replaying themselves again and again. Mio's investigation becomes a race against time to understand the ritual before her sister becomes part of it. And if the upcoming version stays faithful to the spirit of the original narrative, players will find themselves both fascinated and horrified by the idea that the village might not be done with its rituals just yet. Of course, no discussion of Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly would be complete without mentioning the most unusual weapon in horror gaming history, the camera obscura. In most horror games, when a ghost attacks you, the solution involves something dramatic like a shotgun, magical sword, or flamethrower. In Fatal Frame, however, the strategy is much more awkward. You take a picture of it. That's right. The main defense against angry supernatural entities is essentially professional ghost photography. The brilliance of this mechanic is that it forces the player to confront the ghost directly. Instead of running away, you have to point the camera at them, wait for the perfect moment, and snap the photo at the exact time when the spirit is closest. This design choice transforms every encounter into a terrifying game of chicken.